Hi there, my name's Elizabeth and I like to sew smart. Today I'd like to show you the 10 essential items that I think everybody should have in their sewing room. My first essential item is my cutting mat. Now, when you go to get a cutting mat, make sure you get a good one. It's well worth the extra money that you might lay out. Only try and get a two-sided mat so that you can cut fabric on one side and then turn it over and cut wadding on the back. If you've got an old mat like I keep underneath here, that is just for cutting wadding. But always keep one side of your mat nice and clean and safe for just your fabric only. And if you should get something caught when you've cut in the little marks on your mat, take an ordinary eraser and just rub it gently over the top and it will come out. The second essential item is your rotary cutter. Now your rotary cutter is made specifically for you to cut lines with, and I will just show you briefly here. So if you've got a piece of fabric on your board, you can line it up with the lines on your board. This cutter is made specifically to go straight down and cut off a piece of fabric perfectly well. Make sure you keep your blade and everything really nice and clean. That is for straight edging. The third essential item is a good pair of cutting scissors for fabric only. These will cut through leather and quite thicker fabrics, but I use them just for the cotton. And you can tell, you listen to the sound, that's a nice clean cut. That's the first pair of scissors that I use. This pair I use again. Now they will cut fabric, but I use these to cut applique pieces out because applique does have paper on the back. Then I use this just to snip off small pieces around the edges of my finished work or as I'm sewing. And the tiny ones here I use to cut embroidery threads off when I've been machine embroidering. My next essential item is rulers and templates. Now this is a 6.5 inch square. I started off with this when I did I Spy quilts, but you can, if you can't afford to buy all different size squares, you can get a 12.5 inch square and you can cut 6.5 inches along that side, turn your ruler around 6.5 inches back, and you can square any size with this one ruler. The other one is a half size long ruler that I use. I carry that to classes and things for convenience more than anything. But the best one of all for you to have is the full size ruler, which is mine is a 24 inch. That's the best one. You can cut halfway, use it for all manner of things. The next rule that I use isn't actually probably a ruler. It's a maths aid, but I use this to cut a circle, a complete circle, and a half circle. I use that as a template. The other part of this little section is I use these. Now that's a maths aid. This is a drawing and scrapbooking aid, but as you'll see, if I can pop that on here maybe, can you see that? It has all different shapes, a floral shape, round ones, has tiny ones, bigger ones, and it's very cheap. I think this was $2.50 for this one template, and you can reuse it and reuse it and reuse it, so you can actually draw around for a template. That's a very useful thing to have besides your rulers to use. And this one, of course, too, nice neat circle. Essential item number 5 is my seam ripper, or unpicker, some people call them. Now if you look very closely, you'll see there's a little red, like a little red bead that's on the bottom edge of the sharp points on here. Now that's specific for me. I have sewn a seam and I need to unpick it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just snip a couple of stitches on the wrong side. When I come here, you can see that, you can just see there's a little gap here. I'm going to slip my unpicker in with the bead in and just open that seam right up to the end, and the little bead will prevent you cutting your fabric. Number 6 is my awl, and this is a pointed instrument. It has a curved end, as you can see. Now when you're sewing a thick seam or a turn up on something, sometimes it will get stuck in the underneath your machine in the little gaps, and I use this just to guide it gently underneath and make sure it doesn't bunch up. Just keep pushing it under. Really useful. My next essential item, which is number 7, I like to use flat-headed pins when I'm machining. I'm not a big pin user. I prefer to use a temporary adhesive if I'm layering or putting wadding in between, because this one here, 505, it's not at all sticky, but you can peel it up and push it back down and it doesn't seem to affect the fabrics. But the flathead pins are my next choice if I haven't got that, because when I'm pinning and machining, I often catch the ball top on a pin, a normal pin, and it goes under the foot or makes a clunking noise on my machine. But this, they lay very flat and they fit nicely under your sewing machine when you are stitching your seams. My 8th sewing essential in my room is my tall spool holder. These you can buy from most sewing shops. I use it for embroidery. I do use it for ordinary cottons as well, but it's particularly useful when you're sewing with metallic thread. It tends to be a bit wiry and it kinks up when it's going through the tensions on your machine. But I'll find with this spool holder, that remedies it. So let's have a look. I will show you. I've threaded it through my machine as usual, but it's coming from the tall holder, and I'm going to put my finger just on the thread on the top there. It's nice and taut now as it's going across here, which it wouldn't be if it was on this machine one. And I'm just going to show you now, it stitches and it will pull to a good tension. Watch the thread pull nicely through, just pulls really nicely through without breaking. And it's still nice and taut all the way along. My 9th essential is my spool holders, little ones, the bobbins. And I have a bobbin holder there and it doesn't tip out, but sometimes you can't find them in sewing shops. So when I've got a little, take one out here, got this little bobbin. This is an ordinary hairband, just one you would get from a chemist shop, a pharmacy. And so if I haven't got one of these on hand, I just take one that's the same colour as my thread and I cover it with a hairband. It's really a useful thing to have. You can put them on all of them, because look what happens as soon as you take them out, they start unravelling. Just pop a hairband on it and put it there. Essential item number 10 for me is a friction pen. Now it's a colour pen, a fabric marker pen that will iron off. Now you can get them in all different colours, so if you're sewing on a darker piece, you can get a lighter pen. I'm going to use a purple on this. And if you look on the fabric here, there's a little bunch of flowers there. Now I want to get a nice little circle on that. So I'm going to put a template down and I'm just going to go around the template with my iron off pen. I can cut all the way around on the line, and then when I've finished I will simply iron it off and the pattern will be exactly in the middle on the other side. This you can use for seams, you can use it for marking your 1/4 inches, your 1/2 inches, anything. And it comes in, like I said, a variety of colours, and that is something that I find essential and I wouldn't sew without.